There is a sacred strength that walks in heels. There is a divine fire that wears grace like a crown. And there is a power that no enemy, no storm, no betrayal, no weapon formed against her can break. Why? Because when God puts his hand on a woman, he's not just protecting her body, he's covering her destiny. Sister, let the world misunderstand you. Let the critics talk. Let the devil try, because you can't harm a woman who walks under the shield of divine assignment. When God guards a woman, the gates of hell can tremble, but they cannot triumph. As key point 1T, she's not just protected, she's positioned as expanded into 10 paragraphs, without heading or conclusion. When God places his hand upon a woman, it is not merely for shelter from storms. It is for strategy in the storm. Divine protection is not just about keeping harm away. It's about preparing her for impact. Too often, we think God's protection is about comfort, about making life easier, about building fences. But in truth, when God protects a woman, he is building her into a fortress, shaping her to take territory, not just hide behind walls. Every woman who is guarded by God is also being placed by God. She's not randomly floating through life. She's walking on a path paved by providence. The disappointments that should have broken her were part of the blueprint. The delays she didn't understand were divine appointments she didn't see yet. God never wastes pain, and he never positions someone without a purpose stitched into the very fabric of their steps. She's been assigned to that family, that marriage, that ministry, that job, that city. Not by coincidence, but by divine coordination. Even in the moments where she feels unseen, unheard, or overlooked, she's still standing inside a strategy. The wilderness is not a curse, it's a classroom. The dark places are not punishment, they are preparation. And while others may move on impulse or ambition, the woman God guards moves on instruction. Her movements are governed by heaven's hand, not by human hype. She's not just moving in time, she's moving in alignment. Sometimes the protection of God will look like rejection from people. Sometimes his favor will look like isolation. When God is positioning her, he'll remove who can't handle the weight of where she's going. He'll disconnect her from the comfortable so he can connect her to the calling. And though it may feel like loss, it is actually promotion in disguise. Every subtraction is a setup for sacred placement. Every closed door is a redirection to destiny. Her positioning may not make sense to others because it is not designed for public approval. It's designed for kingdom assignment. She doesn't have to prove her path to anyone because her obedience is already her validation. She doesn't have to convince others of her calling because when God positions a woman, the fruit will eventually speak for itself. Her favor will follow her footsteps, even when her path is misunderstood. God is not just placing her physically. He's aligning her spiritually. He's placing her in rooms where her voice will matter. He's setting her before people who need what she carries. He's orchestrating divine encounters, holy timing, and breakthrough moments, all because she has submitted her journey to the one who sees the end from the beginning. Her posture of surrender is her passport to positioning. She's been through what she's been through not because she was unlucky, but because she was selected. She had to walk through the pain, the loss, the tears, the waiting, because what God is about to do in her next season requires the strength built in her last one. Positioning is not painless. It often comes with pressure. But pressure produces power, and her current weight is evidence of her future impact. The woman who is positioned by God doesn't move for applause. She moves for assignment. She's not chasing clout. She's carrying a cross. She's not motivated by competition. She's anchored in conviction. And when the world sees her rise, they may call it favor, but heaven calls it fulfillment. She's been positioned on purpose, for purpose, with purpose. God doesn't position people where they are most comfortable. He places them where they're most needed. He doesn't pick based on public perception. He chooses based on private preparation. So even when others wonder how she got where she is, they will never understand what it cost her, because positioning comes after process. And the woman who is standing now is standing not just because she was protected, but because she was divinely placed to shift the very ground she walks on. There are moments in a woman's life when she wonders if she's been forgotten, when the silence of heaven seems louder than the noise of her problems, when doors shut without warning, and prayers echo in the darkness with no reply. But what she doesn't see is that while everything around her may feel uncertain, God's guard over her life remains unmoved, unshaken, and undefeated. His presence isn't always loud, but it's always loyal. His defense doesn't need an announcement to be effective. Many times, his protection operates in invisibility. He shields her from accidents she never saw coming, steers her away from relationships that would have destroyed her, and blocks opportunities that would have buried her potential. She might think she's being overlooked, but she's actually being overseen by the hand of the Almighty. Even when she walks into rooms where she feels unqualified, it's because heaven already certified her and sent her in with backup that can't be seen by the naked eye. His guarding hand isn't only at work in the big miracles, but in the small mercies. In the moments she changed her route for no reason and avoided harm. In the restless nights that kept her from dangerous decisions. In the canceled plans that felt like a loss but saved her from deeper pain. His fingerprints are all over her life, not just in the blessings she can count, but in the bullets that never touched her, in the traps that never closed around her, in the tears that didn't turn into breakdowns. Just because the enemy planned it doesn't mean God permitted it. There is a line the devil cannot cross. He can roar, but he can't reign. He can attack, but he cannot access. Because God's protection is a spiritual perimeter that no demon can dismantle. Even when the woman feels surrounded by chaos, she is actually encircled by heaven. The enemy may be forming weapons, but the weapons still have to answer to the one who governs all outcomes. God's guarding power doesn't need to be visible to be victorious. He is the God who parts seas and closes mouths of lions, but he's also the God who simply keeps things from happening. That breakup wasn't just heartbreak. It was protection. That delay wasn't punishment. It was preservation. That unexpected, no, wasn't rejection. It was divine insulation. When she learns to trust his unseen hand, she will start seeing miracles in moments that felt meaningless. There is safety in knowing that her life is not left to chance. Her steps are ordered. Her path is observed. Nothing can sneak past heaven's defense. When people betray her, God already saw it coming. When the plans fall apart, God already rerouted her. She doesn't have to figure it all out because the one guarding her has already gone ahead of her. She doesn't have to live afraid because divine security surrounds her on every side. Sometimes God's protection doesn't look like escape. It looks like endurance. He doesn't always pull her out of the fire. Sometimes he walks her through it so she comes out stronger, purer, and unshaken. The pain she survived wasn't proof that God left her. It was evidence that he sustained her. She didn't make it through on her own strength. She was carried. Every step was guarded, even when it felt like she was falling apart. She may have scars, but she's not defeated. She may have walked through trauma, but she's still here. That survival is not random, it's supernatural. The enemy came in like a flood, but the Spirit of God lifted a standard. And even though she cried, even though she lied, even though she broke, she never broke beyond the reach of God's protection. His guard kept her even when she didn't know how to pray. This guarding is not fragile. It's fortified. It's not occasional. It's eternal. It doesn't depend on how strong she feels. It rests on how faithful God is. And because he never sleeps, never slumbers, never gets weary, and never changes, she can walk with boldness. She can rise with confidence. Not because of her perfection, but because of his promise. 1,000 may fall at her side, 10,000 at her right hand, but it will not come near her. Her story is not held together by luck or timing. It's held together by the protective grip of God. And while the world measures safety by what can be seen, she knows the truest security is found in the invisible assurance of the Almighty. Every moment, every breath, every decision, wrapped in the sovereignty of a God who guards what belongs to him. The covering of God is not a reward for flawlessness. It is the result of his divine election. Many believe that only the spotless, the always holy, the unblemished are worthy of being shielded by the Almighty. But if perfection were the requirement, none of us would be worthy. The truth is, you are not covered because you got it all right. You are covered because God saw fit to call you his own. He looked beyond your resume and saw your destiny. He looked beyond your mistakes and saw your mission. He covered you, not because you deserved it, but because you were chosen for it. Some women live under the weight of shame, believing they've disqualified themselves from God's protection. They think their past mistakes have blocked his favor, that their flaws have canceled their calling. But God does not operate like man. He does not abandon what he has authored. If he began a good work in you, he is not intimidated by your mess ups along the way. His covering isn't fragile. It's rooted in his covenant. He didn't wait until you were clean to call you. He covered you in the dirt, loved you in the struggle, and guarded you while you were still growing. The woman God chooses doesn't always look like the woman others would select. She's not the one with the perfect background, the polished pedigree, or the spotless record. She's the one with a limp from wrestling with God, a voice shaped by prayer through tears, and a heart that's been broken enough to be usable. She's not chosen because she's better. She's chosen because she's willing. God doesn't seek out the flawless. He uses the faithful. He covers those who've been crushed, those who've been through hell and didn't let go of heaven. God's covering is not a reward. It's a revelation. It reveals who he is more than who you are. It shows the world that he's a redeemer, a restorer, a protector of purpose. When people look at you and wonder how you survived, how you got that opportunity, how you're still standing, it's because they don't see the covering. They don't see the mercy that caught you, the grace that carried you, the hand that hid you. But you know it wasn't you. You know it wasn't your credentials. It was the call of God that refused to let you go. The enemy will try to convince you that you're unworthy of the protection you're walking in. He'll whisper accusations from your past. He'll remind you of your failures, of the times you should have fallen and didn't. But he'll never mention the blood that speaks a better word. He'll never acknowledge the cross that canceled your condemnation. He'll never point to the purpose God planted in you before you were ever formed. Because your covering didn't begin with your conduct. It began with God's covenant. And what he covers, hell cannot uncover. The chosen are often the ones who never thought they'd be picked. The ones who were left out, talked down to, misunderstood. But God has a way of putting his hand on the overlooked. He elevates the outcast. He strengthens the broken. He wraps his glory around the rejected and says, "This one is mine." And when he does, no one can revoke that decision. His choice is final. His covering is secure. It doesn't come with conditions that shift. It comes with a promise that stands. Don't wait to be perfect before you believe you're protected. The enemy would love to paralyze you with guilt, to keep you sitting in shame while your purpose passes you by. But the woman who understands she is chosen walks differently. She doesn't strut in arrogance. She walks in authority. She's not perfect, but she's protected. She's not sinless, but she's surrendered. And God honors a heart that knows it needs him. He covers the woman who cries out, who repents, who reaches for his strength in her weakness. God's covering is generational. When you're chosen, it's not just for you. It's for those coming after you. He guards your children because of your prayers. He breaks curses because of your obedience. He creates paths in wilderness places because you trusted him when it didn't make sense. Your covering is part of a greater legacy. You are chosen not only to survive, but to establish something that endures. People may judge your past, but God already factored it into your future. He knew what you'd go through. He knew where you'd fall short, and still, he chose you. Still, he covered you. Still, he called you. That's what makes grace so powerful. It's not a response to your goodness. It's a reflection of his. And that grace doesn't just save, it guards. It places a hedge around your destiny that no accusation can penetrate and no mistake can erase. So don't wait to earn what was already given by mercy. You were chosen before the foundation of the world, and that means your flaws can't cancel what heaven already decided. You're not walking in covering because of your perfection. You're walking in covering because God saw fit to assign you a calling. And he always protects what he places on purpose. When a woman discovers who she truly is in the eyes of God, something shifts, not just in her mind, but in the atmosphere around her. She stops shrinking to fit into the boxes others have built. She no longer allows herself to be defined by broken relationships, past trauma, or society's shallow standards. Her identity becomes rooted in something eternal, something immovable, something divine. And when she begins to walk in that truth, the enemy doesn't just notice, he trembles. The enemy has always feared identity. He doesn't mind if you go to church, as long as you never understand who you are in Christ. He doesn't care if you wear the title Christian, as long as you live like you're powerless. But the moment a woman connects with the truth that she is chosen, loved, anointed, equipped, and surrounded by the armies of heaven, The entire spiritual realm is shaken because that woman doesn't just pray, she prays with authority. She doesn't just survive, she advances the kingdom with every step she takes. A guarded woman who knows who she is doesn't wait for permission to move forward. She's not stuck in fear because she knows she's wrapped in fire. She doesn't flinch at the sound of the enemy's threats because she knows the voice of her defender. She walks into rooms and doesn't have to announce herself. Her presence, her peace, her power says everything because her confidence isn't in herself. It's in the one who covers her. When the enemy sees a guarded woman walking in her identity, he doesn't just see her. He sees the God who stands behind her. He sees the prayers she's prayed in secret, the battles she's won in the dark, the worship she's lifted through tears. He remembers the times he tried to take her out and failed. He remembers the attacks that didn't work, the lies she stopped believing, the chains that broke when she praised anyway. He doesn't fear her size. He fears her surrender. A woman who knows who she is doesn't measure her worth by attention, by applause, or by affirmation from man. She is not addicted to likes or validation. She's anchored in truth. She knows her value is not in her beauty, her relationship status, or her resume. It's in the unchangeable reality that she is a daughter of the King. And when she walks with that kind of clarity, the enemy loses the power of confusion. He loses the weapon of insecurity. He loses the grip of intimidation. She doesn't entertain every voice anymore. She doesn't chase opinions. She listens for the whisper of God and follows without hesitation. She understands that spiritual warfare isn't always loud. It's often in the quiet decision to believe God's word over everything else. And because of that, she becomes untouchable in the spirit. The enemy can form weapons, but they bounce off the shield of her identity. He can send storms, but they can't shake a soul that's standing on truth. Her strength isn't in what she has, but in who she is. She may not have the biggest platform, the loudest voice, or the most polished image, but she carries fire. Her worship shifts atmospheres. Her prayers shake strongholds. Her silence even speaks power when she refuses to lower herself to the level of the enemy's noise. She doesn't fight for position. She knows she's already seated in heavenly places. She doesn't beg for favor. She walks in it. The enemy fears her influence because he knows she's not just protecting herself. She's covering others. She's raising daughters, mentoring sisters, speaking life into the broken, and calling out purpose in the forgotten. Her life is a threat not because it's perfect, but because it's aligned. Aligned with heaven, aligned with truth, aligned with victory. Every time she rises, others rise with her. Every time she speaks, darkness loses ground. He fears her persistence because she doesn't quit. She may cry, but she keeps moving. She may get tired, but she keeps believing. She may fall, but she always gets back up. The enemy throws everything at her, hoping she'll give up, but she's got resilience rooted in revelation. She knows the battle is already won. She knows the crown is already promised. She knows the covering is already in place. And so, the enemy's fear is not irrational. It's prophetic. He's not intimidated by what she was. He's afraid of what she's becoming. Because when a woman walks fully in the truth of who she is, guarded by heaven, led by the Spirit, and unshaken by circumstance, as hell loses ground every time she opens her mouth, every time she takes a step, every time she refuses to bow to fear. There is a hidden purpose in the way God guards a woman, not just to shelter her, but to shape her. Many think of divine protection as an escape hatch, a way out of danger, heartbreak, or difficulty. But what if the guarding wasn't about escape, but endurance? What if the protection wasn't a soft landing, but a sacred preparation? God's guarding often becomes his training ground. It is where he molds the soul, forges character, and builds strength that lasts longer than applause and deeper than surface level faith. When God covers a woman, he is not only keeping danger away, he's training her to carry something greater. He shields her while he strengthens her. He hides her not because she's fragile, but because she's under construction. Like a sculptor with a masterpiece under the tarp, he doesn't reveal what isn't finished. That hiding is holy. It's where the pressure gets applied without the public watching. It's where he forms the boldness, breaks the pride, and fills her heart with a quiet fire the world will one day witness. In the training ground of divine guarding, she learns that silence is not absence. She discovers that when God is quiet, he's still speaking in whispers of trust. She learns to walk by faith, not by sight, because in those hidden moments, there are no claps, no confirmation, no immediate answers, just his word. And that word becomes her training manual. His promises become the curriculum. She learns to discern the difference between good and God, urgent and eternal, emotion and conviction. Sometimes the protection looks like closed doors, the relationship that didn't work out, the opportunity that didn't open, the dream that was delayed. But behind every no was a lesson. Behind every detour was a deeper dimension of her identity being unlocked. She didn't see the training at first. It just felt like rejection. It felt like loss. But God was developing her discernment. He was strengthening her sensitivity to his voice. He was teaching her not to chase platforms, but to pursue presence. He guards her not to isolate, but to insulate. He allows her to be in the fire without being consumed, not so she can avoid the heat, but so she can thrive in it. She's not being protected from the storm. She's being trained to command peace in the middle of it. Her covering isn't about comfort. It's about cultivation. And so, while others might see her stillness as stagnation, heaven sees it as schooling. She's being trained in stillness, trained in surrender, trained in steadfastness. The guarding seasons are often the quietest, but the most transformative. This is where roots grow deep. This is where her yes to God becomes unshakable. This is where she stops performing and starts abiding. This is where her dependence becomes her strength. She learns to trust God, not just when she sees his hand, but when all she has is his heart. That kind of trust is forged in fire. It's birthed in the dark where no spotlight shines and no crowd cheers. And it's in this divine training where she begins to shift. She stops begging God to take her out of trials and starts asking him what he's trying to build in her through them. Her prayers mature. Her posture changes. She starts to welcome the press because she knows there's oil in the crushing. She starts to thank him for the guardrails because they saved her from falling off cliffs she didn't even see. Her tears become part of the training. Her worship becomes warfare. Her waiting becomes a weapon. Training under God's guarding is never wasted. The skills she's gaining in private will become weapons in public. The strength she's building in solitude will sustain her in seasons of visibility. The identity she's discovering in the quiet will anchor her when the noise of success or struggle comes. She's not just surviving, she's being shaped, not just covered. She's being commissioned. God is not keeping her hidden to punish her, but to prepare her for what her name is already attached to in heaven. In the midst of all this, she realizes that protection is part of the process. Guarding is God's way of giving her a safe space to fail forward, to fall into his arms, to grow without judgment, to learn without fear. He knows the weight of the calling. He knows what it will demand. So he trains her ahead of time. He teaches her how to lean, how to listen, how to stand. And all of it is happening under his careful, watchful, loving guard. He won't let her break while she's becoming. And even as he guards her, he trains her to guard others. He's raising a woman who won't just survive but lead, who won't just pray for herself but intercede for generations, who won't just stand for truth but speak it boldly. And all of that was developed in the guarding, in the divine gym where resistance built resilience, in the hidden place where protection became preparation, and the girl who once cried out to be rescued became the woman ready to be released. There's a power in a woman's story that no enemy can erase. Her past, her pain, her process, none of it is wasted. Every scar she carries is a testimony. Every wound she survived is a weapon. Her story becomes her shield because it's the proof of God's faithfulness written in the ink of her experience. She doesn't need to fabricate strength or pretend she hasn't struggled. Her real power lies in the fact that she went through the fire and came out with her faith intact. That is her shield. The very thing the enemy thought would destroy her became the very thing God used to develop her. Her heartbreak became her foundation. Her disappointments became her discipline. Her setbacks became her training. She no longer has to hide the chapters of her life she once wished to tear out, because now she realizes they were the exact pages God used to reveal his glory. Her story isn't just something she tells. It's something she wears. It's her armor, her evidence, her declaration that she is not here by accident. Her story doesn't just defend her. It disarms the enemy, because every time he tries to remind her of what she went through, she turns around and uses it to remind him of what God brought her out of. What once brought her shame now fuels her courage. The things she was once too afraid to speak about have become her ministry. She doesn't run from her past, she walks with it, knowing that it's the platform God has placed beneath her feet to elevate his purpose through her life. When people see her now, they might see strength, but they don't always know the wilderness it took to walk this way. They don't see the nights she cried when no one noticed. They don't hear the prayers she whispered in the dark. They don't know about the season she showed up while silently breaking. But she knows. And more importantly, God knows. And because of that, her story isn't just something she carries. It carries her. There's a confidence that rises in a woman who knows what she survived. She doesn't flinch at fear because fear had its chance and lost. She doesn't get rattled by rejection because she's already learned that man's no cannot override God's wise. She walks with a different kind of grace that has been tested and proven. Her story becomes her lens, helping her see clearly what matters and what doesn't. She doesn't waste time trying to be understood by everyone because her validation comes from the one who walked with her through the storm. The more she tells her story, the stronger her shield becomes. not because it changes the past, but because it empowers her present. Each time she testifies, she builds a wall of remembrance, a wall that reminds her that if God did it before, He'll do it again, that if she made it through that, she can face this. Her memory becomes her motivation. Her battles become her blueprint. Her experiences become her endurance. And the enemy can't fight a woman who remembers. There is healing in her honesty. The more she embraces her story, the less power shame has over her. She doesn't just find healing for herself. She opens the door for others to find healing too. Her vulnerability becomes someone else's victory. Her transparency becomes someone else's breakthrough. Because when she stands in her truth, she gives other women permission to do the same. She becomes a lighthouse. Not because she's never faced darkness, but because she found light in it. And that light is what shields her now. It's what guards her mind when doubt creeps in. It's what anchors her when life shakes. It's what reminds her that she's not who she used to be, but she needed to be that woman in order to become this one. Her past wasn't a punishment. It was preparation. And now she can stand boldly, not in spite of her story, but because of it. There's a roar inside her now that wasn't there before. A sound forged in silence, birthed in brokenness, refined in fire. She doesn't need applause to validate it. She doesn't need a microphone to release it. Her very presence carries the echo of redemption. The enemy doesn't fear what she lost. He fears what she found in the loss. And that's why he can't touch her now. Because her story built a shield that doesn't break under pressure. What used to make her cry now makes her courageous. What once made her feel disqualified now becomes the reason she's unstoppable. She no longer hides behind the version of herself that made everyone comfortable. She shows up as the full story, flawed, healed, growing, and guarded. And the beautiful part is this: she's not done yet. Her story is still unfolding, and every new chapter is another layer of strength added to her shield. There is a lie the enemy loves to whisper into the heart of a guarded woman: that she's been forgotten, left behind, or cast aside. But the truth is far deeper, far holier, and far more powerful. When God guards a woman, He does not isolate her to punish her. He separates her to prepare her. He's not cutting her off. He's setting her apart. She's not being left alone. She's being lifted out of what no longer aligns with her calling. Separation isn't about exclusion. It's about elevation. To be separated by God is to be handpicked for something sacred. It's to be removed from the noise so you can hear His voice. It's to be pulled from the crowd so you can walk in clarity. Many people fear separation because it looks like loneliness, but in the kingdom of God, separation is the place of encounter. It's where God breaks off distractions and deepens identity. It's where a woman learns not who she is according to others, but who she is according to the one who made her. The process of being set apart is rarely easy. It often means leaving familiar places, familiar faces, and even familiar feelings. The spaces she once fit into now feel too small. The conversations she once enjoyed now feel empty. The relationships that once defined her begin to fall away. But this isn't rejection. It's redirection. God is pruning her so that she can bear more fruit. He's removing what no longer serves her destiny because He's preparing her to walk in something greater. There is a difference between isolation and consecration. Isolation is a tactic of the enemy meant to make her feel abandoned. Consecration is a strategy of God meant to make her feel aligned. In isolation, there's confusion. In consecration, there's clarity. In isolation, the enemy accuses. In consecration, God affirms. When she's separated for glory, she's not cut off, she's being carved into a vessel that can carry divine purpose without leaking under pressure. Sometimes the separation doesn't make sense to the people around her. They don't understand why she doesn't go where she used to, why she no longer engages in certain conversations, why she seems to be moving differently. But she doesn't have time to explain transformation to those still attached to comfort. What they see as withdrawal is actually obedience. What they label as change is actually alignment. She's not becoming distant, she's becoming distinct. In the season of separation, God detoxes her spirit. He pulls out the need for approval. He uproots comparison. He silences insecurity. He dismantles pride. And in its place, he plants confidence, conviction, and clarity. It's in this holy isolation that she learns to crave his presence more than people's applause. She learns to listen, not to respond, but to receive. She discovers that stillness is not stagnation. It's strength under control. Being set apart doesn't mean she walks alone. It means she walks with God more closely. Her pace changes. Her prayers deepen. Her discernment sharpens. She starts to notice what others overlook. She begins to speak differently, love differently, serve differently. Because separation isn't about status. It's about stewardship. She's been entrusted with something heavy, something holy, something heaven ordained. And God doesn't allow sacred things to be carelessly handled. The more she embraces her separation, the less she feels the need to explain it. She no longer tries to force herself into circles that no longer align with her spirit. She doesn't apologize for her growth. She doesn't dim her light to make others comfortable. She walks in the awareness that she is a carrier of glory, and that requires a lifestyle that reflects the weight of that responsibility. She understands now being guarded doesn't mean being held back. It means being held higher. The truth is, not everyone can handle a woman who has been separated for glory. Her boundaries will be misunderstood. Her silence will be misread. Her strength will be intimidating. But she's no longer moved by misunderstanding. She's anchored in purpose. She knows now that her guarding isn't a cage. It's a calling. And if the road is narrower, it's because the destination is higher. If the room is emptier, it's because the calling is weightier. She was not created to blend in. She was chosen to stand out. What once felt like exile now feels like encounter. What once felt like loss now feels like freedom. What once felt like isolation now feels like intimacy with God. Because when a woman finally embraces her separation as sacred, she stops mourning what left and starts stewarding what's coming. She no longer questions the guarding. She thanks God for it. Because she now sees what it was all for. She is not alone, she is anointed. She is not forgotten. She is favored. And she is not isolated. She is set apart for glory. There is something deeply reassuring in knowing that the one who guards your life is also the one who goes before you. He's not just standing behind you, catching what the enemy throws. He's up ahead, clearing paths you didn't even know were blocked. Before you step into a situation, he's already stepped into it for you. Before you speak a word, he's already shaped the conversation. Before you face the unknown, he's already secured the outcome. His protection is not passive, it's progressive. It moves with purpose. It travels ahead with strategy and intent. When you walk into rooms that seem intimidating, you can remember that he already walked in first. He's already spoken to hearts, aligned circumstances, and positioned people before you ever arrive. You don't have to overthink or overperform, because the atmosphere has been shaped by his presence. He's not improvising your journey, he's orchestrating it. Every detail, every connection, every divine moment has been arranged in advance by a God who never works last minute. Sometimes we can't see the evidence that he's gone before us. The doors may still be closed, the opportunities still uncertain, the clarity still delayed. But make no mistake, just because it's not visible doesn't mean it's not active. God's ahead of you in realms you haven't reached yet, preparing things your eyes haven't seen and your mind hasn't imagined. While you're still wrestling with fear, he's already written the victory. While you're calculating risks, he's already set the reward in place. The God who guards is not reactionary. He doesn't wait for trouble to arrive to start protecting you. He knew what would come against you before it ever formed. That's why his provision is pre-positioned. That's why his wisdom is available before you even know you need it. He's been in your tomorrow since before you were born. And while the world panics over the unpredictable, you can have peace in the sovereignty of a God who stands in your future as solidly as he does in your past. He's not just going before you to make the way easier. He's going before you to make it divine. The places he leads you won't always be comfortable, but they will always be purposeful. Sometimes he leads you into challenges, but even there, he's already secured your strength. Sometimes he leads you into conflict, but he's already planned your breakthrough. Sometimes he leads you through valleys, but he's already stationed angels along the path. You're not wandering, you're being guided step by a divine strategist. In seasons of uncertainty, when you don't know what's next, this truth becomes your anchor. You don't have to know what's next because you know who's already there. You don't have to see the full map when the guide has already scouted the terrain. You can rest in the knowledge that your future is not a mystery to him, it's a mission. He's been there, laid the groundwork, spoken to the right people, and prepared the environment for your arrival. You're not stepping into chaos. You're stepping into coordination. Sometimes God will delay you not because you're behind, but because he's still finishing what's ahead. He's not making you wait as punishment. He's aligning what's on the other side. The delay is divine synchronization. He's arranging timing so that when you walk through the door, everything meets you in perfect readiness. You may think you're late, but you're right on time for the moment heaven prepared. Trust the pace. Trust the planner. Trust the path you can't yet see. He also goes before you in battles. Before the first arrow flies, he's already declared the outcome. Before the first word of opposition is spoken, he's already decreed your endurance. And though you may have to fight, you're not fighting alone. The God who goes before you fights for you. He steps into enemy territory, shakes foundations, and speaks peace into warfare. The battles you dread, he has already disarmed. The trials you fear, he has already mapped a way through. His presence before you doesn't cancel challenges, but it guarantees victory. You may walk through fire, but he's already ensured you won't be consumed. You may walk through deep waters, but He's already promised you won't drown. What intimidates others won't intimidate you. Not because of your strength, but because of the strength that surrounds and precedes you. You carry a confidence not rooted in control, but in companionship. You walk with one who's always a step ahead and yet never leaves your side. And while others try to predict the future by trends and forecasts, you walk in faith. Not blind faith, but anchored faith. Faith in a God who is already at the finish line, waving you forward, cheering you on, and calling you into destiny. You're not moving alone, not even for a second. You are walking in steps that have already been ordered, toward a purpose that's already been sealed by a God who both guards behind and goes before. A woman who has been guarded by God does not keep that protection to herself. She multiplies it. She becomes a shelter for others because she knows what it means to be sheltered. She becomes a voice of hope because she remembers what it felt like to be hopeless. She becomes a shield for others because she knows what it is to be shielded. When a woman walks in the covering of God, she doesn't become arrogant. She becomes compassionate. Her pain has taught her to recognize pain in others. Her healing has trained her to steward healing for someone else. What she once begged God for, she now becomes a vessel to release in others. The strength she carries is not just for herself. It was never meant to stop with her. Her strength is a bridge. Her breakthrough is a blueprint. Her wisdom is a weapon for those coming behind her. She lifts others not to be seen, but because she knows what it feels like to be unseen. She speaks life because she remembers the days when silence almost swallowed her. She pours out grace because she remembers the days when she desperately needed someone to believe in her. The guarded woman doesn't hold her peace. She passes it on. A guarded woman doesn't compete. She covers. She's not threatened by the rise of others. She fuels it. Her maturity silences jealousy, and her humility quiets comparison. She cheers loudly, not because she needs to be noticed, but because she knows what it feels like to be overlooked. She understands that rising in the kingdom is not about stepping over others, but lifting them while you climb. She finds joy not only in her own freedom, but in seeing others set free. She doesn't fear another woman's glow. She fans the flame. Because she has been guarded through storms, she knows how to stand with others when the winds hit. She doesn't run from messy stories. She leans in. She doesn't flinch when someone cries or crumbles. She holds space. Her discernment doesn't make her judgmental. It makes her gentle. She sees beyond the exterior into the battle underneath. She hears what's not being said, and she responds not with advice, but with presence. Not with lectures, but with love. She has learned that sometimes the greatest lifting comes from simply showing up and staying. She lifts through listening. She lifts through leading. She lifts through intercession. She lifts through example. Her entire life becomes a testimony of what is possible when God wraps His hand around a broken soul and turns it into a vessel of glory. And she doesn't withhold that testimony. She shares it boldly. She tells her story not to gain sympathy, but to build strength. Her scars become signals. Her past becomes a path for someone else to walk on. She has moved from surviving to serving, from being guarded to becoming a guardian for others. When she walks into a room, she carries atmosphere. People sense peace because she's fought for it. They feel safe because she has stood in the trenches and knows what it costs to build trust. She doesn't manipulate people. She ministers to them. She doesn't use people to build her platform. She uses her platform to build people. And she does it all without needing to be praised, because her reward comes from a place far greater than applause. Her reward is knowing she's been faithful with what was given to her. This kind of woman doesn't need a title to lead. She doesn't need a stage to speak. She leads from her presence. She speaks from her spirit. Her influence is not loud, but it is lasting. She has the kind of impact that cannot be measured by numbers, but by transformation. The lives she touches may not always say it out loud, but they are changed because of her obedience, her consistency, and her quiet strength. She is the kind of woman who prays behind closed doors and shifts atmospheres without ever needing to be seen. She mentors without ego. She advises without agenda. She corrects with love, not condemnation. She builds without belittling. She speaks truth not to dominate, but to deliver. Her posture is not superiority, but service. She knows that lifting others doesn't mean losing herself. It means multiplying what God has placed in her. And every time she lifts someone else, she herself becomes stronger. Every time she helps another woman rise, she rises with her. Her life becomes a chain reaction of freedom. The women she lifts go on to lift others. Her legacy is not limited to her own success. It is written in the lives of those she empowered. The guarded woman becomes a generational force. Her obedience echoes into daughters, into sisters, into strangers who will never know her name, but will feel her impact. She lifts not to build an empire, but to establish a kingdom, not to be admired, but to be aligned with the heart of God. She doesn't just build people. She builds environments. She creates space for healing, space for growth, space for safety. She shifts culture in homes, churches, workplaces, and communities. Her very presence becomes a place of refuge. Not because she's perfect, but because she's been protected. Not because she's flawless, but because she's been faithful. And now, what once felt like guarding has become her greatest gift. A divine mantle she carries, not to keep for herself, but to pass on, to multiply, and to pour into the next woman who needs to be reminded, you are seen, you are safe, and you are strong. When a woman is guarded by heaven, hell takes notice, not because she walks perfectly, but because she walks protected. Not because she never stumbles, but because she never stays down. She's not a threat because of her title, her looks, or her influence. She's a threat because she carries the presence of the one who cannot be defeated. Hell studies her movements, watches her patterns, attempts to sabotage her progress. But every time it thinks it has her cornered, grace shows up and breaks the grip. She is not fragile, she is fortified. Fortified by fire, prayer, obedience, and divine authority that didn't come cheap. Hell can't handle her because she doesn't panic when pressure shows up. She prays. She doesn't retreat when life shakes. She refocuses. She doesn't collapse under warfare. She worships. Every attack the enemy throws becomes a platform for deeper praise. Every setback becomes a setup for spiritual elevation. She knows how to turn pain into purpose and resistance into revelation. She's not impressed by the threats of the enemy because she knows the one who holds the final word. Her posture isn't prideful. It's powerful because it's rooted in presence, not performance. She has walked through shadows and survived storms that would have swallowed others whole. And that survival alone terrifies hell, because it knows that if she ever truly believed who she was and what she carried, entire bloodlines would shift, generational curses would break, cycles would end, chains would snap just by the sound of her voice. And that's why the attacks have been so heavy. That's why the warfare has felt relentless. Because hell only hits what it fears. And it fears her because it can't reach the hedge surrounding her life. This woman knows how to move in silence. Her greatest victories aren't posted. They're prayed through. She doesn't need to clap back. She lets God step forward. She doesn't need to prove her worth. She walks in it. Her confidence is not in her ability to control, but in her surrender to the one who controls it all. And when hell tries to intimidate her, she remembers who her defender is. Her strength is built in secret. Her fire is forged in stillness, and her roar is reserved for when heaven says it's time to release it. The enemy's biggest issue isn't just that she's guarded. It's that she's guarded and growing. Every day she rises with breath in her lungs. She gets stronger. Every prayer she prays builds another wall hell can't climb. Every scripture she declares becomes a sword. Every time she refuses to give up, a demon loses its grip. She's not just surviving, she's taking territory. She's not just enduring, she's expanding. And because of that, her presence becomes a problem in the spiritual realm. She's a woman who no longer fights for attention. She fights for alignment. She doesn't chase platforms, she chases purpose. She's not looking to impress, she's looking to impact. And that makes her dangerous to darkness, because she doesn't operate out of fear. She operates from discernment. She doesn't speak to be heard. She speaks to shift atmospheres. Her words carry weight because they've been baptized in prayer and soaked in scripture. When she speaks, heaven responds and hell retreats. Hell can't handle a woman who has been through it and still believes. A woman who has been betrayed but still loves. A woman who has lost much but still worships. A woman who has been misunderstood but still walks in grace. Her resilience is radical. Her hope is holy. Her fight is fueled by faith that refuses to bend, even when the winds rage. She's a walking contradiction to the enemy's predictions. She wasn't supposed to make it. She wasn't supposed to still be standing, but here she is, stronger, wiser, and guarded by glory. Every time she forgives, she steps further into freedom. Every time she resists temptation, she closes another access point to the enemy. Every time she praises in pain, she calls heaven down into her situation. And every time she keeps going when it would be easier to quit, she declares war on the very gates of hell. She is not just a survivor, she's a sent one. Sent to interrupt darkness, sent to carry light, sent to shake strongholds. And she's not alone. Angels go with her. Favor covers her. Fire surrounds her. This woman doesn't just have faith, she walks in authority. She doesn't shrink in adversity, she shines in it. She's not perfect, but she is persistent. And that persistence is what hell can't handle. Because every time she gets back up, she comes back stronger. Every time she lifts her hands, chains fall. Every time she believes again, hope rises. She doesn't just stand on promises, she lives inside of them. She is surrounded by a kingdom that cannot be shaken, and everything that rises against her must fall. She understands that her battle is not against flesh and blood, and she doesn't waste energy fighting people. She targets principalities. She silences lies with truth. She replaces fear with faith. And because she knows her enemy, she knows how to defeat him. Not with volume, but with victory. Not by reacting, but by resting in the finished work of the cross. Her very life is a declaration that hell may form weapons, but they will never prosper. Because when heaven guards a woman, hell can never grip her.